I sued my ex-husband because the child support he gives my son wasn't enough. He requested a paternity test. It came back negative, and now he is suing me for the 9 years of support he paid. He should be a bit more empathetic. I am sitting here with a cold cup of coffee and this crumpled DNA report in my hand, and I honestly cannot believe how heartless some people can be. I was married to James, my ex-husband, for 6 beautiful yet eventually taxing years, and we have been divorced for 3. Throughout our entire relationship, I was the one who held everything together, ensuring our home was a sanctuary while he focused on his career. When we split, I didn't ask for much, just the standard support for our 9-year-old son, Leo. James has always paid his child support. I'll give him that, but he did it with a sort of cold, mechanical regularity that always felt a bit off. He never seemed to understand that raising a child in today's world requires more than just the bare minimum the court suggests. For the last 3 years, I've been stretching every dollar, trying to maintain the lifestyle Leo deserves. With inflation hitting the grocery store and the rising cost of his private school and extracurricular activities, the original amount just wasn't cutting it anymore. I tried to talk to James about it privately, hoping he would see reason and realize that his son's happiness shouldn't have a fixed price tag. Instead of listening to my concerns or acknowledging the sacrifices I make daily, he would just point to the original decree as if it were some sacred, unchangeable text. It became clear that he wasn't going to step up voluntarily, leaving me with no choice but to take legal action. I did what any responsible, self-respecting mother would do. I sued him for an increase in child support. I expected a bit of a legal battle, perhaps some grumbling about his budget, but I never expected him to turn so incredibly petty and cruel. Instead of being a man and providing for the family he helped build, James decided to attack the very foundation of our bond. During the first hearing, his lawyer stood up and demanded a paternity test before James would sign a single new document. I was floored, sitting there in that sterile courtroom while he refused to even look me in the eye. It felt like a slap in the face, a public questioning of my character after years of loyalty and shared history. I agreed to the test, of course, because I wanted to move past his childish games and get the support Leo needs. The results just came back yesterday, and the paper in my hand says the probability of paternity is 0%. I honestly felt a wave of dizziness, not because of the result itself, but because of how James is choosing to interpret a simple biological technicality. He's acting as if this piece of paper erases nearly a decade of bedtime stories, scraped knees, and father-son bonding. It is so typical of him to get hung up on a number or a data point instead of looking at the human being right in front of him. Leo is the only son he has ever known, and James is the only father Leo has ever loved. Yet James is treating this like a business transaction gone wrong. Now, instead of realizing that he has a moral obligation to the child he raised, he's acting like I've committed some sort of unforgivable crime against him. He's looking at me with this blank, icy stare as if the last 9 years of our lives meant absolutely nothing. I tried to explain to him that family is built on love and presence, not just chromosomes, but he just walked away. It's disgusting how quickly he can turn his back on a child just because his ego took a hit from a lab report. He's behaving as though I tricked him, ignoring the fact that I gave him the best years of my life and a beautiful family. He should be grateful for the time we had, yet all he can see is his own perceived victimhood. The atmosphere in the lawyer's office when we met to discuss the results was absolutely suffocating. James sat there with his arms crossed, radiating a level of hostility that I found completely unnecessary and, frankly, quite frightening. I attempted to bring up Leo's upcoming soccer camp fees, thinking it might soften his heart, but he didn't even flinch. His lawyer started talking about legal ramifications and fraud, terms that have no place in a discussion about a young boy's future. It's as if they've forgotten there's a real child involved who is waiting at home for his dad to come pick him up. James's lack of empathy in this moment is truly revealing of the kind of man he has become. I've spent the last 24 hours crying, not for myself but for the injustice of it all. How can a man who once claimed to love me be so willing to tear our lives apart over a biological fluke? I was a young woman when we met, and like anyone, I had a life before him, but that shouldn't invalidate the family we created together. He's focusing on a brief moment from the past rather than the decade of devotion I've shown him. It feels like he's been looking for an excuse to abandon his responsibilities, and he finally found one in a test tube. I am the victim here, forced to defend my motherhood against his cold, calculating greed. The worst part is that he's already started talking to his friends and family, painting me as some sort of villainous mastermind. I've received several pointed texts from his mother, a woman I used to call Mom, asking how I could be so deceptive. It's incredible how quickly people turn on you when things get complicated, forgetting every holiday spent together and every favor I ever did for them. They are all siding with James's bank account instead of considering the emotional well-being of their supposed grandson. My intentions have always been pure. I only ever wanted the best for Leo, and that includes a father who isn't obsessed with DNA. This morning, I received a call from my own attorney, and the news only got more absurd. James isn't just refusing the increase in support, he's threatening to stop paying the current amount entirely. He's literally willing to let his son go without just to prove a point and satisfy his own bruised pride. It's a level of narcissism I didn't think he was capable of, especially considering how much he used to boast about being a family man. He's weaponizing the legal system to punish me for a situation that I find just as shocking as he does. He has no empathy for the position he's putting us in, focusing only on his desire for revenge. I find myself wondering what happened to the man I married, the one who promised to protect us no matter what. That man has been replaced by a stranger who views his own child as a liability to be liquidated. Every time I look at Leo, my heart breaks because I know his world is about to be shattered by his father's selfishness. I'm trying to stay strong, but the weight of James's cruelty is becoming almost too much to bear alone. He thinks he's winning some sort of game, but in reality, he's just proving that his love was always conditional and shallow. A real man wouldn't care about a piece of paper. He would care about the boy who calls him daddy. Main story comments. Anonymous user 1 says you lied to this man for an entire decade about his own child, and now you're calling him the one without empathy? You literally committed paternity fraud and had the nerve to sue him for more money. Pop's reply, it wasn't a lie. It was a complicated situation from a decade ago that I had moved past for the sake of our family. Biology doesn't make a father, but James's greed is certainly making him a stranger to the boy who loves him. Anonymous user 2 says he has every right to stop paying immediately and walk away. Why should he fund a life for a child that isn't his, especially after you tried to squeeze him for more? Op's reply, he's the only father Leo has ever known, and abandoning a child over a piece of paper is absolutely disgusting. He's choosing a bank balance over a soul, which just shows how transactional his love truly was. Update 1. It's been 2 weeks since my last update, and the situation has spiraled into something truly unrecognizable and cruel. James has completely cut us off, stopping all communication as if we never even existed in his world. He didn't even show up for his scheduled weekend with Leo, leaving me to explain to a heartbroken 9-year-old why his father didn't come to pick him up. I tried calling James dozens of times, hoping that hearing his son's voice in the background would wake up whatever remains of his conscience. Instead, when he finally picked up, his voice was like ice, devoid of any of the warmth he used to fake so well. He didn't ask how Leo was doing or if we had enough for groceries. He just told me to call Marcus and hung his phone up. The mention of that name felt like a physical blow, a calculated attempt to humiliate me and shift the blame for his own abandonment. Marcus is someone from my very distant past, a person I haven't spoken to or thought about in many years. The fact that James is weaponizing a single mistake I made when we were briefly off right before the wedding is just beyond the pale. We were going through a rough patch back then, and I was young, confused, and looking for some kind of validation that James wasn't giving me at the time. To bring that up now after 9 years of marriage and co-parenting is a level of pettiness that I didn't think was possible. He's putting his own fragile ego above the stability and emotional health of a child who did nothing wrong. I spent the rest of that afternoon holding Leo while he cried, unable to give him a satisfying answer as to why Daddy was being so mean. It is devastating to watch a child realize that the person they looked up to most is actually a coward who runs away when things get difficult. James thinks he's punishing me, but he's really just traumatizing a little boy who only ever wanted his father's love. I feel like I'm drowning in the fallout of James's decision to play the victim instead of being a parent. He's acting as though he's the only one who has been hurt, completely ignoring the wrecking ball he's swung through our living room. My life has become a series of difficult explanations and desperate attempts to keep things normal for Leo. I've had to start looking into legal options to force James back to the table, but the lawyers tell me it's an uphill battle now that the test is out. It's so unfair. The law cares more about DNA than it does about the actual bonds of a family that has functioned for nearly a decade. James is hiding behind legalities to avoid his moral responsibilities, and it makes me sick to my stomach. He's even started changing his social media profiles, removing all photos of us and Leo as if he can just delete 9 years of his life with a click. It's a level of erasure that feels like a second divorce, but this time, he's divorcing his own son. I am left to pick up the pieces of the mess he's making, all while he acts like he's the one who was wronged. Every time the phone rings, I hope it's him calling to apologize and tell us that he's coming over to fix this. Instead, it's usually another bill or a message from one of our mutual friends who has clearly been coached on what to say by him. People I've known for years are suddenly busy or not wanting to get involved, which we all know is code for siding with James. It's lonely at the top of the moral high ground, especially when you're there alone with a child who doesn't understand why his world is ending. I never thought I'd see the day where James would be so easily influenced by his own spite. He's choosing to be a stranger to his son just to satisfy a grudge against me. I tried to reach out to Marcus, just out of a sense of pure desperation and a need for some kind of answers, but he's proven to be exactly as useless as I remembered. He hasn't changed a bit, still drifting through life without any sense of responsibility or direction. It's laughable that James would suggest I turn to someone like that for help with a 9-year-old's upbringing. It just proves that James isn't thinking clearly. He's just lashing out and trying to hurt me in the most efficient way he can find. He knows Marcus isn't an option, which makes his suggestion even more cruel and calculated. It's a deflection of his own duties onto a ghost from the past. Leo has started asking more pointed questions about why we can't go to our usual weekend spots, or why James isn't calling him at night anymore. I try to protect him from the full truth, but it's becoming harder and harder as the days turn into weeks of silence. I have to be the strong one, the one who stays, while James gets to play the role of the jilted, innocent man. He doesn't see the work I'm doing to keep his son's spirit from breaking completely. He's too busy nursing his pride and listening to his lawyers tell him how much money he's going to save now. It's a disgusting display of misplaced priorities and a complete lack of human decency. I've started looking for a part-time job to supplement what little I have left, but it's difficult with Leo's schedule and my own mental state. I feel like I'm constantly on the verge of a breakdown, but I have to keep it together for the sake of the house. James, meanwhile, is probably out enjoying his newfound freedom and his extra cash, not giving a second thought to the hunger or the sadness he's caused. He should be ashamed of himself, but I doubt he even knows what that word means anymore. He's too caught up in his own narrative of betrayal to see the reality of the situation. I am fighting a war on two fronts, one against poverty and one against the man I once loved. The bank called yesterday about the mortgage, and I had to beg them for a small extension while I sort things out with my ex. It was humiliating to have to explain my personal life to a stranger just to keep a roof over our heads. James knows exactly when the mortgage is due, and he knows that I can't cover it all on my own right now. He's intentionally trying to crash my life, hoping I'll crawl back to him and beg for mercy. But I won't do that. I have more dignity in my pinky finger than he has in his entire body. I will find a way to provide for Leo, even if it means working 3 jobs while James rots in his own selfishness. I keep thinking about the mistake James mentioned and how he's using it to justify everything he's doing now. It was one night, a decade ago, during a time when we weren't even sure if we were going to stay together. To hold that against me now, after everything we've built, is just a sign of his own insecurity and lack of character. He's looking for any reason to be the victim so he doesn't have to face the fact that he's abandoning a child. He's a small man who needs a big excuse to do a terrible thing. And I am the one who has to pay the price for his inability to be a real father. Update 1 comments. Anonymous user 1 says, "Tell the truth to the kid is actually the best advice anyone could give you right now. Leo deserves to know his father isn't James, rather than thinking James just stopped loving him for no reason." Ops reply, "I will not traumatize a 9-year-old with biological details. He can't understand just because James is being a coward. He is the father who raised him. The DNA is irrelevant to a child's heart, but James's absence is very real. Anonymous user 2 says, call Marcus seems like the only solid advice in this whole mess. If James isn't the dad, then the guy who actually is should be the one you're suing for support. Ops reply, Marcus is a total deadbeat who wouldn't know how to parent if a manual hit him in the face. James is the one who signed the birth certificate and made a commitment. He doesn't get to just opt out because he's feeling sensitive about the past. Update 2. It's been 1 month since my last update, and things have gone from bad to worse in ways I couldn't have even imagined. I received a formal notice via a process server today, and I am still shaking as I try to process the words on the page. James isn't just stopping the payments and walking away from his responsibilities, he's actually counter-suing me in court. He isn't satisfied with just abandoning Leo. He wants every single cent he has paid over the last 9 years back in his pocket. It's calling it paternity fraud in the legal documents, a term that feels like a physical assault on my dignity. Does he have any idea what that kind of financial blow would do to our lives right now? I've spent that money on his son's life, keeping a roof over our heads, putting healthy food on the table, and buying the toys that James used to love watching him play with. He's acting like I stole from him, like I'm some kind of common thief who spent his money on designer handbags instead of our child's welfare. In reality, I gave him the incredible privilege of being a father and a family man for nearly a decade. He's being so incredibly transactional about the whole thing, as if he can put a price tag on the memories and the bond they shared. It's a level of coldness that makes me wonder if I ever truly knew the man I shared a bed with for 6 years. He's demanding a total reimbursement of hundreds of thousands of dollars, an amount that is completely impossible for me to even conceive of paying. He knows I don't have that kind of money sitting in a bank account. He knows exactly where every penny went. This isn't about the money for him. It's about total destruction and making sure I have nothing left. He's acting like a narcissist who only cares about DNA and fairness while ignoring the human wreckage he's creating in his wake. It is truly disgusting to see someone I once loved turn into a legal predator, hunting down the mother of the child he raised. He has absolutely no empathy for the fact that we are struggling just to get by day to day. My lawyer told me that this kind of case is becoming more common, which just proves how much society is starting to favor men's wallets over children's stability. It's a terrifying prospect to think that a judge might actually listen to James's ridiculous claims of being defrauded. I was a young woman trying to make a relationship work, and I truly believed James was the father of the family we were building. He's rewriting our entire history to make himself look like a victim when he was a willing participant in every moment of our lives together. He enjoyed the status of being a father, the tax breaks, and the social standing it gave him, and now he wants a refund. It's a level of entitlement that is honestly breathtaking and completely characteristic of his true nature. I haven't been able to sleep since the papers arrived, my mind constantly racing through all the ways this could ruin us. If he wins, I'll lose the house, my car, and any hope of a stable future for Leo. James doesn't seem to care that his revenge will directly result in his son being homeless and destitute. He's so focused on his own perceived injury that he's blinded to the reality of what he's doing to a 9-year-old boy. He's showing his true colors now, and they are the colors of a man who values his bank balance more than his legacy. I'm forced to defend myself against a man who has decided that 9 years of love was just a bad investment. He wants to write off. Every time I look at Leo playing in the backyard, I feel a sense of impending doom that I can't shake off. He still asks about James, and I have to bite my tongue to keep from telling him what his daddy is really trying to do to us. It's a heavy burden to carry, knowing that the person who should be protecting him is the one leading the charge to destroy our lives. James is a monster in a suit, using the court system as his weapon of choice to punish me for his own insecurities. He has no concept of the damage he's doing, or perhaps he just doesn't care as long as he gets his money back. It's a level of cruelty that I never thought I'd have to face from someone I once called my best friend. I've had to start selling some of my jewelry and better clothes just to keep the lights on and pay the initial retainer for the new legal defense. It's humiliating to go into those pawn shops and be offered pennies for things that meant so much to me. James probably knows I'm doing this and is laughing about it with his high-priced attorneys in their fancy offices. He's trying to starve me out, hoping I'll just give up and let him take everything we've worked for. But he's forgotten that I am a mother, and I will fight like a lioness to protect my son from his father's greed. He can sue me for every penny he wants, but he'll never be able to sue away the fact that he's a failure as a human being. The social pressure is also mounting, as more of the parents from Leo's school have started to hear rumors about the lawsuit. I see the way they look at me in the carpool line, a mix of pity and judgment that makes me want to scream. They don't know the whole story. They only know what James has leaked to make himself look like the injured party. They don't see the man who is trying to bankrupt the mother of his child over a decade-old technicality. It's isolating to be surrounded by people who have already decided you're the villain because it's a more interesting story for them to tell. I am the one who is actually suffering here, yet I'm the one being treated like a pariah. James's lawyer sent over a settlement offer that was so insulting. I laughed through my tears when I read it. They want me to sign over the house and half of my future wages for the next 10 years in exchange for dropping the fraud charges. It's a literal attempt to turn me into an indentured servant for a man who is already much wealthier than I am. He wants to own my future because he's mad about his past, which is the definition of a toxic and controlling personality. I told my lawyer to reject it immediately, even though the alternative is a long and expensive court battle. I will not let James win this way. I have to stand up for myself and for Leo's right to a life that isn't dictated by James's spite. The stress is starting to take a physical toll on me as I've lost weight and my hair has started to thin out in patches. I look in the mirror and I barely recognize the woman staring back at me, a hollowed-out version of the person I used to be. James, on the other hand, is probably looking better than ever, relieved of the burden of his family and focused on his own selfish desires. He's a parasite who fed off my energy and my devotion for years, and now he's trying to drain the last few drops of my lifeblood. I hope he's proud of the man he's become, a man who sues his own son's mother for paternity fraud. It's a legacy of shame that he'll have to carry forever even if he wins every cent back. Update 2 comments. Anonymous user 1 says you're facing a debt of 9 years of child support plus legal fees. That is a massive financial reality you need to face. This isn't just about empathy. It's about the fact that you took money under false pretenses for a decade. Ops reply, it's not a debt or false pretenses. It was a gift of a family and a role as a father that James didn't even deserve in the first place. He's trying to put a price on love, which just shows his own moral bankruptcy. Anonymous user 2 says James was literally robbed of the choice to raise his own biological children because he was busy raising someone else's. He has every right to want his money back after being lied to for so long. Ops reply, he isn't a victim. He's a narcissist who only cares about DNA and genetics instead of the real human bond he had with Leo. He's choosing to be a stranger to a child who still loves him, and that is the only real robbery happening here. Update 3. It's been 3 months since my last update, and the walls are truly closing in on us as the legal system continues to fail me. I reached a point of such total desperation that I actually tried to track down Marcus to see if he would finally step up and take some responsibility. I thought that if I could show James that I was trying to find an alternative, maybe he would see how ridiculous and cruel his lawsuit really is. I found Marcus living in a rundown trailer on the outskirts of town, exactly the kind of nobody I remembered him being, with no job and no prospects. He looked at me like I was a ghost and told me he didn't have a dime to his name, let alone 9 years of back pay to give anyone. When I told James about this encounter, hoping he'd finally realize that he is the only real option for Leo's father, he didn't show an ounce of compassion. Instead of seeing the tragedy of the situation, he actually laughed, a cold and mocking sound that chilled me to the bone. He told me that since I was the one who wanted to use the court system to squeeze more money out of him, I should learn to enjoy the court system now that it's working against me. It was such a cruel thing to say, essentially admitting that his entire lawsuit is nothing more than a quest for revenge. He's enjoying my struggle, savoring the fact that I'm being forced to deal with a man like Marcus while he sits in his ivory tower. The most recent hearing was an absolute disaster, as the judge seemed to be completely charmed by James's victim narrative. They aren't looking at the 9 years of parenting he did. They're only looking at the laboratory results and the dates of our marriage. The judge actually spoke about paternity fraud as if it were a proven fact, completely ignoring my testimony about the complexity of our relationship at the time. They are now talking about garnishing my wages for the next 20 years to pay James back for the support he gave Leo. How is this justice in a civilized society? I was trying to secure a better life for my son, and the state is helping James literally put us on the street. I don't know how I'm supposed to survive with a garnished paycheck, especially since I'm already working 2 jobs just to cover the basic bills. James is literally trying to bankrupt the mother of his child, and the legal system is handing him the tools to do it. He has no empathy for the fact that every dollar he takes from me is a dollar taken away from Leo's future. He's so blinded by his desire to win that he doesn't care if he leaves his son with nothing but a bitter mother and a pile of debt. It's a level of calculated malice that makes my skin crawl every time I have to see him in the courtroom. He sits there with a smirk on his face, clearly proud of the destruction he's causing. The irony of the whole situation is that James was the one who always insisted on doing things the right way. Yet here he is, tearing a family apart for a profit. He's acting as if I'm the one who put Leo in this position when it was his decision to demand the DNA test and his decision to sue me. If he had just been a decent man and agreed to the modest increase I asked for, none of this would be happening. He brought this disaster upon us with his own pettiness, and now he's blaming me for the fallout. I am a mother trying to survive in a world that seems determined to punish me for a single mistake I made a decade ago. It's a heavy price to pay for a moment of youthful confusion. I've had to start visiting local food banks just to make sure Leo has enough to eat throughout the week, which is a level of humiliation I never thought I'd experience. I see people I know there, and I have to hide my face in my hood so they won't recognize the successful woman they used to see at the school gates. James is probably out at 5-star restaurants spending the money he's saving on expensive wine and new gadgets. He knows how much I'm struggling, but he just sees it as consequences for my actions, as if he's some kind of moral judge. He's a hypocrite of the highest order, preaching about honesty while practicing the most brutal kind of financial warfare. The emotional toll on Leo is becoming more apparent every day, as he's started acting out in school and having nightmares every night. He knows something is terribly wrong, even if I haven't told him the full extent of his father's cruelty yet. I have to spend my few hours at home comforting a child who is mourning, a man who is still very much alive and just a few miles away. James is a coward for not being the one to explain to Leo why he's trying to take away our home and our security. He's letting me be the one to bear the brunt of his son's confusion and pain while he plays the role of the innocent bystander. It's a disgusting abdication of his duty as a human being. I tried to write James a letter, pleading with him to think about the long-term impact this will have on Leo's life and his ability to trust people. I poured my heart out, admitting that while things were complicated back then, my love for him and our family was always real. He didn't even respond to the letter. Instead, his lawyer sent a cold cease and desist order telling me to stop harassing their client. It's as if he's completely erased any shred of the man he used to be, replaced by a legal entity that only speaks in threats and demands. He has no soul left, only a ledger where he's trying to balance his own perceived losses. My parents have tried to help a little, but they are on a fixed income and can't provide the kind of financial support I need to fight this. They're just as shocked by James's behavior as I am, remembering him as the polite, helpful son-in-law they once welcomed into their home. Even they can see that he's gone off the rails, driven by a toxic mix of pride and greed that has poisoned his judgment. They are worried about my health as I look more and more like a ghost with every passing day of this nightmare. I feel like I'm fighting a losing battle against a man who has all the resources and none of the heart. I sometimes sit in my car and scream until my throat is raw, just to release some of the pressure that's building up inside me. It feels so unfair that a decade of devotion can be wiped out by a single piece of paper and a man's bruised ego. I am being punished for being a mother, for trying to provide for my child in an increasingly expensive world. James is the one who should be on trial for his lack of empathy and his willingness to destroy his own family for a few extra dollars. But in this world, it seems that money always wins over love, and the indignant are the ones who get left in the dust. Update 3 comments. Anonymous user 1 says the irony here is thick enough to cut with a knife. You are the one who brought this to the court system first by suing him for more money. And now you're upset that the court is actually looking at the facts. Ops reply, I brought the matter to court for the sake of the child and his needs. James brought his lawsuit purely for revenge and to satisfy his own ego. There is a world of difference between a mother seeking support and a man seeking to bankrupt his family. Anonymous user 2 says you are the one who put your son on the street by lying to James for 9 years. If you had been honest from the start, James wouldn't be in this position and you wouldn't be facing these consequences. Ops reply, stop blaming the mother for trying to survive and keep her family together in a difficult situation. James had every opportunity to be a real man and choose his son over his pride, but he chose the money instead. Update 4. It's been 6 months since my last update and the final gavel has officially fallen on our lives, leaving me in a state of utter ruin. I lost the case in a way that felt more like an execution than a legal proceeding. The court ruled that I intentionally misled James for nearly a decade and ordered a massive long-term reimbursement plan that will follow me for the rest of my working life. My credit is completely ruined, making it impossible for me to ever own a home again or even get a decent car loan. I had to move into a tiny, cramped apartment in a part of town I would have never even driven through a year ago, just to keep Leo in school. My son keeps asking why we are poor now, why we had to leave our big house and all of his favorite things behind. It breaks my heart every single time, especially knowing that the man who could fix all of this is the one who caused it. James is living his best life, traveling to tropical locations and posting photos of himself smiling as if he doesn't have a care in the world. He's celebrating his victory while we suffer in a 2-room apartment where the heat barely works. All of this destruction happened simply because I asked for a few $100s more a month to give my son the life he truly deserved. It was a reasonable request from a mother, yet James treated it like an act of war. James's complete lack of empathy didn't just end our marriage or our bond, it effectively destroyed a child's entire future. Leo won't have the college fund we promised him, the stable home environment he needs, or the father figure he once adored. James has proven that he is a monster who values his bank account more than the soul of the boy he raised for 9 years. He's a hollow man who thinks that winning a lawsuit makes him a better person. But in my eyes, he's a failure who will never know true love. I hope he's happy with his money because he's lost the only family that ever truly cared about him. I spend my nights wondering how a person can be so cold, so calculating, and so utterly devoid of human feeling. He's rewritten the story of our life together to fit his narrative of being a victim, ignoring every sacrifice I made for him. He has no idea of the strength it takes to keep going when the world has been pulled out from under you by the person you trusted most. I am still the same dedicated mother I always was, but now I'm a mother who has been betrayed by the very system that should have protected us. James may have the money, but he will never have the peace of mind that comes with knowing you did the right thing. The apartment we live in now is always cold and the neighbors are loud, a constant reminder of how far we've fallen because of one man's spite. I work 12-hour shifts at a job I hate just to make sure Leo has shoes that fit and enough food for his lunchbox. Meanwhile, James is probably buying a new sports car with the money he's reclaimed from his own son's childhood. It's a level of injustice that I still find hard to swallow, a bitter pill that I have to take every single morning. He's a parasite who took the best years of my life and then sued me for the privilege of serving him. I've had to watch Leo become a different child, one who is quiet and withdrawn, haunted by the sudden disappearance of the man he called Dad. He doesn't understand legalities or DNA. He only understands that the person who used to play catch with him is now the person making his mother cry every night. James is a coward for not facing his son and explaining why his empathy has a price tag attached to it. He's left me to answer for his crimes, to be the one to hold Leo when he wakes up from his nightmares. It's a burden I carry with a sense of weary, indignant pride, knowing that I am the only real parent in this equation. Every time I see a photo of James online looking tanned and happy, I feel a fresh wave of disgust for the person he's become. He thinks he's won something, but he's really just proven that his heart is as small as his bank account is large. He's a man who traded a legacy for a reimbursement check, a trade that no person of character would ever even consider. He can keep his money and his justice because I have the one thing he'll never have: the unconditional love of a son who knows I stayed when everyone else left. He's a monster who will die alone, surrounded by the cold comfort of the dollars he stole from a child's future. I often think about that day in court, the way James didn't even look at me. As the judge read the verdict, he was already checking his watch, probably planning his next vacation or thinking about what he was going to buy with his winnings. It was the ultimate display of his narcissism, a final confirmation that he never truly loved us at all. He only loved the reflection of himself he saw in our family, and when that reflection was challenged, he smashed the mirror. He's a small, petty man who found a way to use the law to satisfy his own monstrous ego. I am left with nothing but my son and my indignation, a fire that keeps me warm in this freezing apartment. I will continue to tell Leo the truth that his mother fought for him and his father chose money over his own family. It's a hard lesson for a child to learn, but it's one that James has forced upon us with his relentless cruelty. We are survivors of a man who lacked the basic human empathy to be a father when it mattered most. I hope the money is worth the empty life he's built for himself, because to me, he's nothing more than a ghost of a man I never really knew. In the end, this wasn't about a DNA test or child support. It was about a man's desire to destroy what he could no longer control. James has achieved his goal of making us poor and miserable, but he will never break my spirit or my devotion to my son. I will work until my hands bleed to give Leo a life, while James spends his days trying to forget the family he abandoned for a paycheck. He, the villain of this story, the one who chose greed over love, and no court ruling will ever change that. I'm a mother, he is a stranger, and that is the only reality that truly matters.